welcome to the Growth Junction, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of Bitcoin, finance, crypto, and Web3 by speaking to leaders in the space who are shaping the future of the industry. I'm Dennis. I've been through 2.5 crypto cycles. I have definitely felt the anxieties of the highs and lows in my wallets. Before this, I used to work for multiple marketing agencies, one of them being a top Web3 agency. So today I get to welcome somebody who is an expert in on-chain interactions and transactions, Nikhil Raghuveera, the co-founder and CEO of Predicate. Nikhil, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dennis. So Nikhil, co-founder and CEO of Predicate. We essentially are policy infrastructure in Web3, and I'm sure we'll get to talk a little bit more about what that is. Started Predicate about back in 2023. And before Predicate, I was head of strategy and innovation at the Celo Foundation. So I spent a good bit of time in Web3. Celo, for context, is a layer 2 blockchain focusing on financial inclusion and payments in emerging markets. Separate from that, I've been very active in the digital asset policy space as a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. And I started my career over a decade ago, not in Web3, but actually in economic consulting in the litigation space on securities and antitrust.
Right. Awesome. Thanks for that. So your background at the Celo Foundation must have given you unique insights into DeFi. So how did that experience shape the mission of Predicate?
Yeah, so I think really for what we're doing at Predicate, the worldview that we have is that blockchains become the global financial settlement system. And that was very much how we saw the world at Celo as well, is that you're going to have people and organizations are moving their activity onto an on-chain system. And that heavily informs how we build Predicate and what we're thinking about. So my time at Celo, basically that was the work that I was doing, right? Was working with different projects across the industry, launch different applications and use cases on the Celo blockchain.
Mm-hmm. All right. And how does that play into Predicate now?
Yeah. So now for Predicate, what we enable, so a bit of a background there. So Predicate is policy infrastructure. And what we believe is that blockchains as a global financial settlement system will have users and organizations interact across regulated and unregulated markets. So, not just in the United States, not just in Europe, but across different markets. So across African markets, across Latin American markets, across Asian markets. And so when you start having these types of interactions across different types of jurisdictions and places, policy becomes critical infrastructure. Policy here being any type of rule, kind of logic that needs to be done before a transaction is actually executed. And I think we can draw a lot of parallels to the traditional global financial system, where you have to think about the laws and regulations, you have to think about business requirements, user requirements, all of these things when interacting in a financial system. And so I think in that case, really for us, what we're having to do is build this entire critical infrastructure to enable transaction level rules across the entire system. So our time at Celo heavily informed that because, I was here in the US, but then Celo was doing a lot of work across different African markets. And large projects are having to think about, we're having to deal with the real financial flow. What are the different rules and systems that we need in place to determine what transactions can go through, what transactions can't go through? So Predicate builds this infrastructure and we work with many large projects who are building policies on the Predicate infrastructure.
Yeah, cool. So please walk us through a simple example of a prerequisite, what needs to be fulfilled before a transaction can go through.
Yeah, sure. So today is March 24th, and recently there's been a lot of news on Tornado Cash and on privacy, right? So privacy being used by malicious actors, by rogue nations to launder funds and basically move money around in order to fund activities that most governments and most people just don't want to have done on a blockchain. So an example I have is Aleo, the privacy blockchain. Aleo is a privacy blockchain in which their ecosystem passed a governance proposal saying every bridge needs to have some pre-transaction policies for what can be bridged into the Aleo ecosystem. And if they don't meet that, validators should essentially say, we're not going to support these transactions. That was the governance proposal. So the purpose of this proposal then was to actually prevent Aleo from becoming a hub for malicious actors to launder their funds, basically, so that they're not going, a malicious actor, let's say there's an exploit, like what happened with Bybit, that those funds aren't moved from Ethereum over to Aleo to then be laundered on a privacy chain there. So how Predicate is being used here is actually the bridge. The bridges are using Predicate to create policies. Policies here are for flow of funds checks, rate limits, geolocation, something that they can basically seamlessly integrate and build onto their system, rather than having to go and build their own custom deposit screener, each bridge having to build and maintain their own custom deposit screener. So this is an example of how Predicate is used in action, is specifically for compliance and privacy.
Cool. Awesome. So what are the primary users of the Predicate tools, and what specific problems are you using, solving for them?
Yeah, so the primary users of Predicate are developers and builders, right? Developers and builders who are creating and building policies for the different applications that they're doing. Now, this spans a lot of different verticals, right? So this is, as we were just talking about, it could be a privacy protocol. We also have some RWA projects. So we had recently done an announcement with Plume, where all transactions going into the Plume infrastructure, the Plume ecosystem. Plume is an RWA-oriented L2. All transactions going there are checked via Predicate. So RWAs is another one. We've been working with a few different large stablecoin projects, some large DeFi projects as well. Also some of the RASs. So Caldera, for example, is building a policy engine on Predicate. You want to enable policies into your Alchemy rollups, you can use Predicate for that as well. And then the last one is actually smart contract wallets. You can actually set outbound transaction requirements for your smart contract wallets. Who do I not want to send money to? Who do I want to send money to? Don't interact with a malicious contract that might drain funds. Set a limit for how much funds can actually be sent at any given point in time. And this feeds in really well with AI agent guardrails. So how do you actually set guardrails for transactions that are executed by an AI agent? So really for us, it's like the full kind of spectrum across anything one might be doing on AI, on chain, leading up even into AI. And the one other one I forgot to mention is also solver policies. So either the LP or the users of solvers can set requirements for what transactions they solve for. Think of solvers as kind of like financial intermediaries, right? Because they're executing transactions on behalf of users. And so that's another place. So yeah, we're kind of covering a lot of different facets.
Yeah, awesome. So what are some significant trends you're seeing in blockchain and DeFi, and how are you positioned to address them, especially in terms of financial inclusion?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what blockchains enable is for anyone to be able to access financial systems, right? And financial tools. That's really paramount to everything that we're building. And this means that it's open places for different people to build and use different financial solutions. So what does that mean from a trend standpoint? Is we're seeing lots of different applications that are built both by traditional Web3 developers, but we're also seeing more and more Web2 types of organizations think about launching assets or building their own applications. I think the best example of this is really the discussions that have been going around on stablecoins, right? So the world of like lots of different stablecoins coming in on chain. And the reason why is because we're saying, hey, look, stablecoins can be used for a lot of different purposes and can be issued by a lot of different organizations for different target markets. That's the trend that we're seeing, is just this bridging between what was just historically just, like this kind of side market of crypto developers. But now we're actually saying, wait, this is going to be connecting to large organizations. And this means that people who have tools across different parts of the world can now start accessing these different larger organizations as well. So as a result, the trend that we're seeing is really just far more activity and engagement by larger institutions, not just traditional financial institutions, but fintechs, right? And other companies. That's a trend that we're seeing. And I think that is where it fits in really well with Predicate, because all different organizations have different requirements, and users also have different requirements of who they transact with, where their funds go, who sends money to them, all of those things. And that's really well designed for Predicate, right? Because we are built as that mechanism of creating policies for users and organizations. And all this is in a way in which it's not us who is defining those policies, but rather all the different people who are actually building and interacting on chain.
Right. That's really awesome. That's a little bit too much for me. It's a very deep knowledge, obviously. But thanks for that.
I can give a clear
Yeah.
example here to make this a
awesome.
little bit more transparent, right? Or a little bit more concrete. So policies are important because we all use and live by them. I'll give you two examples. One is I, as a normal individual, when I go and buy a pair of clothes or buy a pair of shoes, let's say, I'm not actively looking to buy these pair of shoes that I know are stolen. If they're stolen, I'm not actually going to go and buy it, right? I instead will actively go to places that I know I can trust and buy my shoes from those places, right? It'll be a normal store. I'm not going into a back alley, even though I can probably get the shoes for a cheaper price if I go to a back alley and get it in a black market or from someplace that was stolen. I'm very actively not doing that. In blockchain, we're actually not able to make any of those types of determination of where are we buying products. That's a policy decision that I'm making as an individual in all cases. So how do we enable that expressivity on chain when we're thinking about who we're interacting with the financial system? Another example I would give in like real world is in the United States, the United States elected the current administration, the Trump administration. One of the first things they went and did was said, hey, we're going to block payments by the US Treasury, even though it's been apportioned by Congress, because this doesn't adhere to the policy rules that we have from the White House standpoint and are mandated by the American population. So the White House blocked all payments by Treasury. It was about $1 trillion worth of payments. This is a policy decision. And so what we're saying here is that the White House came in and said, we have a mandate over Congress for the actual spend of this. In a case for when we think about on-chain and why we're building Predicate and why we see policy as critical infrastructure is we're saying that organizations, institutions, people all care about when their money is used and when it isn't used and how it's used. And we see that every day in real world. So how do you actually enable that expressivity on chain is something that isn't easy, whether that is for a privacy protocol on what funds can go through their system, a stablecoin that's being issued by a fintech that has to set requirements for when a stablecoin can be minted, an RWA project for what assets can come into their RWA system. All of these things are policies. And in that case, when we start saying, wait, all these different groups and people are going to be interacting on chain, you actually need to enable this type of infrastructure. So hopefully that clarifies things a little bit as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for that. So what's happening in the market that's making the landscape more challenging or easier to operate in right now?
I think the part that's making, I'll give you both the part that's making it harder and the part that's making it easier. I think it's a crypto market, right? So things are never easy and things are also never hard in different ways. So things that are making it harder are definitely I think more macroeconomic uncertainty. If we've looked, stock markets have gone down, asset prices have also gone down. It doesn't hinder development, but it does potentially slow down how organizations and basically have the capital and how they think about what are they doing on chain. And when they're thinking about, great, we're actually going to be moving assets into new technology. So general market uncertainty definitely slows things down. But the things that are helping are, it seems like there is right now it seems like there's a lot more kind of regulatory certainty, and as well as more things that are coming down the pipeline. Best example I can give of this in the United States is the Genius stablecoin bill, which is currently going through Congress, targeted for being passed sometime in August. That's a lot of regulatory clarity when it comes to issuing a stablecoin. So the result here is that we're seeing a lot more regulatory clarity, which means that people are more comfortable saying, oh, we can actually use blockchain technology.
Yeah.
All of last year and prior, it was very much up in the air of what can we do and what can't we do. I think we're seeing a lot more of that clarity. That speeds the entire industry's work, right? That accelerates things. That says, hey, wait, we're actually now getting real adoption. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's not just, a casino economy. It's, hey, there's going to be real financial transactions happening on chain. those things all start accelerating our work, because we're saying, look, it's policy infrastructure for the global financial settlement system. Presumably, the global financial settlement has to be built on chain for our thing to work. If it's not being built, then that's going to slow down our work. And I think we're seeing more and more of real development on blockchains.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really exciting time for blockchain. And the acceptance is just going up, and I don't think it can be stopped anymore. It's just inevitable. So that's really great for all of us. So what are your goals for Predicate in the next 6 months, 12 months, 36 months?
Yeah,
Hard to say in blockchain.
Yeah, I don't know if I can give I think like what I can say is that, for the next 6 months, we have a number of large projects we're building on Predicate. And so making sure those go live without any problems, all those systems work well, having a high performant system on our end. The other thing is we don't have any front end tooling yet. So that's actually something we're building right now, is the actual front end tooling for a developer to seamlessly go and create and build policy infrastructure on Predicate. Right now it's white glove. We have to have a project reach out to us, and then we'll work directly with them. So having this become more and more self-serve. And this starts looking a bit like a Stripe meets Amazon for us, where we have kind of the SDKs, seamless way of building and integrating Predicate, and then the Amazon marketplace of what all different sources of information do you want to use when you want to create a policy. So, you can use a chain analysis, a TRM, a hypernative chain analysis TRM, or risk score providers. Hypernative is anomaly detection, a WebAssy for fraud detection, all different, a witness chain for geolocation, all different data that you can use. So think of this as like a drop-down menu of what all different sources do I want to use when creating and enforcing a policy. So that's what we're doing on the next 6 months, is some like large launches as well as front-end tooling. I think from there, it starts going into a world of continuing to get more and more launches on Predicate, as well as just making it so that Predicate is that kind of global critical infrastructure for any form of financial activity, and being able to set the rules and guardrails for that.
Awesome. So if you had a magic wand, what's one issue, one problem that if you could solve it right now with one wave, what would it be?
If I could solve one thing right now, I think it would be complete regulatory clarity across all issues that are needed. So that way we're not still kind of waiting for different pieces, but you have those pieces in place. I think that would start accelerating a lot of additional development as well. So I think it's that, right? Like right now, there's still that waiting game of, discussions have to be had. You have to align on the best policy, make sure that there's nothing that's missed, continue to iterate, all of those things. And those things don't happen quickly. There's a lot of different stakeholders that you have to account for. But I think if we can have that hypothetically in a world where it's like, oh, this is already all in place, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Do you think it's a long time until we see that all in place?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Right. Because think of how long it took to be able to create what is today's financial system, and how much iteration there still happens. Right. And you've seen large things. I mean, we can go back to the Bretton Woods, which was the original creation of the monetary system, but go all the way up till, in the 90s, you had a lot of work around like financial institutions, high frequency trading. Then we go into 2000s, we had the dot-com bubble and a lot of things coming out of there. And then you go into the 07, 08, and then you had a financial crisis, and you had entirely new kind of requirements for banks leading into like the Basel Accords. Even in the 2010s, you had LIBOR manipulation. That was another big deal. And like, how do we think about LIBOR creation? So I think there's so many different things that have to be covered. There's things that are from a security standpoint, a commodity standpoint, a taxation standpoint, a law enforcement standpoint, a treasury standpoint, all these different things. Like this is going to take a lot of time because there's just a lot there's so many different aspects to it, and it'll continue to iterate. Right? It's not something that's static. It has to constantly evolve.
Yeah. Cool. So a couple more questions. What are some of your big partners that work with you on Predicate?
Yeah, so
or
the ones
projects?
that we've made, yeah, so some of the ones that we've announced are Alio, Plume, Alchemy, Caldera. We'll be doing some work that's not public yet, but will be pretty soon. Will be with some work that we're doing with Layer Zero that actually relates really closely to Plume. So those are some of our partners. We have some other ones, but that are also quite large, but we haven't shared yet because they're not public.
Yeah, awesome. So last question: do you guys have a token also? Is there a token that you use or your partners use, and so on?
Yeah. Oh, and one other project I forgot to mention is TRM,
Yeah.
the compliance data provider.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of whether we have a token or not, we don't have a token. We have a distributed network with operators who are issuing signatures on behalf of the Predicate network for policy enforcement, but we don't have a token. Many of the projects building on Predicate obviously do, but we don't have a token.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Nikhil. That was a very insightful conversation, and I'm happy to learn a little bit more about Predicate. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and I'm sure we will see a lot more coming from Predicate. Please tell people where they can find you, Predicate, on Twitter, and so on. And if any last words also, then now's your chance.
Yeah, sure. So thanks so much for having me. This was awesome. Obviously, there's a lot of work that we're doing, and it's been pretty cool seeing how many new things can be built on Predicate and kind of where that's taking us, and kind of the pickup from very, very large projects who are now building really what they have to have in order to be able to operate and scale their work. To get in touch with us, so our website is predicate.io, predicate.io. And then I'm also on Twitter and quite active on Twitter, so you can also get in touch with me there. My Twitter handle is at PUMPERNIKHIL. So I can be contacted there. And I really appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
Awesome. It's a pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. So people, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, or share it with somebody deep in the crypto space. And until next time, stay curious and keep building. Thanks for now, and see you next time. Thank you so much again, Nikhil, and take care. Bye.
Bye.